Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dane, your host. Hope you're doing great wherever you may find yourselves. Blessings to all of you wonderful people out there. Today I would like to discuss with you why I've never jumped aboard or taken part in the second age of vinyl, or as some people have called it, the vinyl revival, the vinyl resurgence, a return to vinyl, the vinyl revolution, whatever you want to call it. That's today's topic. But before I get into why I've never jumped into this interesting phenomenon, I would like to give a brief history of the CD and the vinyl format, because it ties into where I come in and all of that. So very quickly, the vinyl revival, as it's often called, is a renewed interest and increased sales of vinyl records, which began in the mid-2000s, with sales starting to rise again in 2006 and really gaining momentum in the late 2010s. So here's a brief history of this revival. Mid-2000s, after a period of decline, vinyl sales begin to pick up, as I said, in the mid-2000s, defying or challenging the dominance of the CD format. Okay. There were record lows before 2006, and in 2006, those lows pushed aside, people really taking an interest in vinyl again. But as I said, late 2010, really gaining momentum, okay? And record stores and indie artists are playing a significant role in this. 2017 is perhaps a climax or turning point with vinyl sales. January 2017 saw the highest number of vinyl records sold since 1991, making the 10th consecutive year of vinyl growth. Okay? And 1991 is such a crucial year because 1991 or thereabouts is really when CD begins to take over the market with respect to music format. 91 through 95, and then beyond that, up until when vinyl begins to resurgence. So the 90s, essentially what I'm saying, is when CDs really begin to take hold of the market and the sales are mostly in CDs. Okay? So when did vinyl surpass CD? 2022. Vinyl records officially surpassed CDs as the most popular physical format for music for the first time since 1987. And vinyl sales continue to rise, driven, of course, by people who are passionate about vinyl and love and have an emotional and nostalgic connection to vinyl, and because, like so many people, the argument is that vinyl feels or sounds richer and warmer. Now, growing up in the 70s, my childhood, and high school in the 80s, most of the formats, the biggest format that I had for all of my music was vinyl. I loved vinyl. And yes, I was one of these people who argued and still argue today that compared to the CD, vinyl sounds warmer and richer, as cliched as those terms are, than the CD. CD has its advantages, of course, but it then begs the question, well, hey Dane, how come, if you believe even today that vinyl sounds warmer and richer than CD, why haven't you not jumped aboard this phenomenon? So that's what I'm going to share with you in a minute. So as I said, CDs began to really become popular in 91 and then through that decade. I worked at Musicland, I worked at Sam Goody, and for about 10 years in retail sales at 5 or 6 different stores in Louisiana, mostly New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And during 91, I noticed that, well, first of all, the big store that I worked at in the Cortana Mall in Baton Rouge was like a mini warehouse from wall to wall, from the beginning at the entrance of the store all the way almost to the back of the store where their shirts and the electronics and posters were. Wall to wall, as far as the eye can see, CDs. Okay, of course we had cassettes on one wall and videos on the other, VHS, and then, DVD later. But CD was king in the 90s, let's face it. So, because I'm an employee and vinyl's becoming difficult to find more and more, I'm spending my money on CDs. Got an employee discount? Of course I'm going to do that. And I didn't want to. But it was a matter of, hey, you want to get new music, you got to jump aboard the CD train. Or so we thought. And you did for a while until vinyl made its comeback. So, like I said, I'm spending money buying CD after CD after CD because, hey, I'm a music fan. Go figure. Okay? And in addition to putting money to have said music, this is a lot of time. This is a lot of effort in some ways. It's a lot of research, that kind of thing. It's back in the day when you could listen to music and put it on the store and have people return CDs if they didn't like what they heard. You had the stores that, I can't remember the name of the store, where you could go in and listen to the music on headphones. We started to do that as well. I want to say Sound Warehouse, but I don't think that's right. Blockbuster, that was it. So very important to recognize that vinyl was beginning very difficult to find. Again, all these CD stores at the time in the 90s, not much vinyl to be found, if any, except in specialty places, or if you could pre-order it or order it, special order it, that kind of thing. So essentially what I'm saying is that by the mid-90s, 95, thereabouts, I'm committed wholeheartedly to the CD as the format for music. Again, I didn't want to conform, but it was a matter of music survival. And then really setting the stage for recognizing my commitment to the CD was when Hurricane Katrina came along in 2005 and destroyed all of my vinyl music collection. So I had to now replace these if I didn't have them on CD already. We're talking about 500 plus vinyl records that were damaged by the flood. So again, I'm committed to the CD at this point. I've come so far. Again, blood, sweat, tears, the metaphor, right? And of course the money and the time. Building up my music library. And so it would have been a monumental task to replace those 500 vinyl records on vinyl as opposed to just getting them on CD, which I ended up doing. Now, so reason number one, I had committed myself to the CD because we thought it was here to stay and vinyl would not come back. Next, space limited. Have a small apartment, limited space. I did not want to go back to having a lot of my space filled up with large vinyl records or having two different formats. In addition, I'm not one to jump aboard a trend just because it's a trend. If I'm going to take part in something that's a trend or trending, it's because I like it. So for me, it's not about trying to fit in. Let's face it, some people do things just to fit in. I'm not one of those people. A lot of people aren't that people. I'm not Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, that sort of thing. I'm not going to fall for the what is old is new again all the time, if at all. Here's an example of that. It's what I call Chick-fil-A syndrome, because when I was working in a different school about, 15 years ago or longer, we had and still today have a Chick-fil-A in the mall, which is about 5 minutes away from where I live here in this apartment. And then they put one on the same main street that leads to the mall. And of course, people are attracted to that because it's new. And I ask my students, how come you not eating at the mall anymore and eating at the new Chick-fil-A? Well, because it's new. I say, well, it's not new. It's the same food. So again, I didn't understand. I don't understand that. So anyway, another reason why I didn't jump aboard the vinyl train resurgence, if you will, is because I discovered, as many of us have, that some vinyl is actually digital, which to me flies in the face of why you would want to get a vinyl recording in the first place. Again, the warm richness of those highs and lows. Now, here's the biggest reason why I have not jumped aboard this vinyl resurgence, if you will. It's a matter of supply and demand, depending on your philosophy. Some will argue that, excuse me for a minute. Sorry, it's laundry day. Some will argue that supply creates demand. Some will argue that demand creates the supply. You could definitely argue that so many people were not conforming to the CD that they went out of their way to, stick to their guns, and good for them. And because of that demand, eventually vinyl makes its return, and it does. So yes, in many cases, demand can create said supply, and in some cases, supply will create said demand. So for example, an example of where supply creates demand, not a good example. Years ago, there's a video on Facebook or YouTube of a fair, and they're selling fried butter, if you can believe that. I've mentioned this before in a different context. And the young girl's, recording her video, showing you the fried butter, and then eventually the butter melts, and all you have is a collection of warm butter in this little boat, in the sun, and she's scooping it up with a spoon like it's soup, and I thought, how disgusting. So I'm not necessarily the type of person who's going to fall into something just because there's a supply for it. Again, think of the woman back in the 70s, very popular thing, if you remember, if you've been around since the 70s, of the woman who bought cat litter just because it was on sale. And I've spoken to about that before. So if we look at prices when CDs were king in the 90s, CDs could be, not talking on sale, CDs essentially could be anywhere from $15.99 to $16.99 to $17.99, sometimes $19.99. And at that time, vinyl was $9.99, in some cases $7.99. Okay. Now, when CDs were on sale, I remember sometimes they'd be as low as $12.99, sometimes $14.99. In the second vinyl age, the current age of vinyl, the vinyl resurgence, vinyl approximate average of a vinyl record that's not a double record is $29.99. And a double record like Kiss Alive 1, I saw recently, $49.99. Most people, will repay regardless of price. Not me, I refuse. And of course, a lot of people will pay regardless of price because they can afford it. But so essentially what I'm saying here is that I didn't want to go back to my love of vinyl because, again, one reason, because I was damn sure was not going to pay more money for something that I could get on CD that's a third of the price, half the price. So Kiss Alive, $49.99, almost $50 plus tax. And then if you're shipping it, even more, so maybe $60, say from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, whatever. So say $60 when you can get it on CD for less than half of that, $12.99 plus shipping, so maybe $20. So a third of the price. So I refuse, and still today refuse, because, again, it's about saving money, and CDs are not like horrible sounding, that kind of thing. So let me be clear. I'm not criticizing people for buying vinyl. Never going to do that. Or following this trend, or being part of this phenomenon. This is what makes them happy, that sort of thing. But from my point of view, I question that this is possibly shady. This is possibly a scam. This is possibly buying into the okie doke. Again, just for me, this is possibly being bamboozled. This is possibly being swindled. This is possibly a grift. Again, from my point of view, how is it, the rhetorical question is, how is it that vinyl was once $9.99 or $10.99 for something brand new, and now it's almost 6 times as much for that same thing now? Why? Because people, or rather the labels and whoever's making it, know that people are going to buy it. Okay, because what's old is new again. So again, I'm not going to play this game. Okay, I've committed to the CD, and I'm not going to. It feels something. I could be wrong. but something feels off where you're paying for something, you're paying money for something, a lot more money for something that was once cheaper. Okay? Who's to say that one day the decrease of vinyl sales will occur again? And then vinyl will become cheaper again, and then CD will now be what's expensive. So it's possible, and so that's the big reason why I refuse to invest in vinyl, is because to me, again, not criticizing people who invest and have their love, good for you, but for me, I think something is off. I can't prove it, but I think that they're charging people exorbitant amount of money because they can, and they know that people will buy into it. I'm not going to be one of those people. No judgment, no criticizing people who want to pay that money, but I refuse to play along because, as I said, I think that there's something wrong here where you have to pay for something that was once cheaper. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. God bless. Bye now.